One second. Hello guys, myself Sasi Kumar, and this is day 49 of improving my communication skills. And today we are going to read a book just because I have no time to prepare for GD means any topics because our one company that is Jindal Steel that has came for an internships. So we have to prepare our resume. It takes too much time for us and no skin. That's okay. That's why I was not able to prepare the any topics. And in the evening times, I went to the hostel number 28 to meet my few friends and just a small talk on old age memories and future planning as well. So that's why today I am going to read book just because I have little bit distracted, I think. So that's why I'm going to read book. And last few days I was not uploading a video just because I have my tripod. I had given my tripod to one of my friend. So today he came and he actually he went for some event. There he has also win the bronze medal for our college. That's the great things for us. And yeah, today we are going to start reading book The Art of Explanation by Rose Atkins. And in we are in first chapter in which we are in the third points. In first chapter there is some points that we have to learn. So there is third point. First point is simplicity. As much as you can keep your conversation simple, but make sure never miss the essential details during your conversation. And next you have uh, uh, next one is complexity. So as simple then essential, no complexity. The more complicated a subject or an issue, the greater the threat to an effective explanation. If we include complexities and get it wrong, we risk, however, we are addressing feeling confused and overwhelmed, or worse, still often or ignored. The temptation to walk away from complexity in order to avoid all of that is very real. It also would appear to help our pursuit of simplicity. But just as simplicity doesn't mean ignoring essential detail, nor does it mean ignoring the essential complexities of what we want to explain. Because rare are the subjects that comes without a complexity. To explain them well, we need to talk that one. Example: in the summer of 2015, I got a call from my then editor asking me to go to a Greece. It was struggling to meet it national debate repayment and to put it mildly, there was disagreement over what to do what about that. There was protest on the streets. The European Union was working out what help it might offer. The Greek government was working out what terms it might accept in return for that help. For a moment, it seemed possible Greece should drop out of the euro currency, something that would have had enormous political and economical consequence for the whole of the EU. For close to a couple of weeks, I spent long baking days on a roof looking down over Sant'Agama Square in the Athens, with to my right the Greek parliament at the top of it. I was there to do what the BBC calls lap and continuous. This means you are there to present or report whenever BBC News TV output requires. If it's the biggest story in the world, and the Greek debate crisis, crisis frequently was the summer you are required a lot. You may be on air many hours across the day. That's relevant to how you go about explaining the story because there is far too much coverage for you to prepare for each moment. You are not going to know every question. You will be asked for every development you will need to describe, and so you need to be ready for whatever comes your way. The debate, the debate crisis, the debate crashes. Oh, sorry. The debate crashes was a story resting on incredibly complex national and international economic and political consideration. The complexity of the issues was matched by the importance. And so, if those first few days in between applying endless foundation in the forlorn hope of containing the sweet on my forehead, I tried to navigate how to explain those complexities without notes, without huge amounts of prior knowledge, without advance warning of what I had been asked, and without much time on air to do the explaining. If that sounds daunting, it was daunting. It is daunting when I do similar reporting trips now. It can be tempting in those moments to gravitate towards the easier part of the story and to take an off the sale descriptions. This It can be tempting in these moments to gravitate towards the easier part of the story to take an off the shelf descriptions that someone else has written on the more challenging aspect. But I knew if I did that, I'd come unstuck sooner rather than later. There was nothing for it. I would have to embrace the complexity. The Athens rooftop, which became my temporary home, was a little smaller than a tennis court. In one corner, she had a gazebo to keep us and the equipment cool between reports. If there was a longer break, there was also a teeny office we could retreat to. It was in there. It was in there that I drew up three lists. The first was for the issues I thought I understood. I also wrote who I I also wrote how best I thought I could explain them. The next list was for elements of the story I was really struggling to understand, let alone explain. The third was for the moment blank. Here I would put other aspects of the story that I didn't understand as I discovered them. I correctly assumed there would be a steady stream of new development that would flummox me. From there, I started to research and to fill in the gaps as best I could. There was though a point that I would inevitably reach where I needed to ask for help. I knew I had reached this point because I reach it on every story I worked on. There is always something I don't understand, and I always ask. I could give you countless examples of the pros and pros. I perform with colleagues, doctors, teachers, IT supports, electricians, whoever it might be when I want help with something I don't understand. If I said this, would that be right? I asked earlier in my career. I had been sent to Brussels to host an hour long phone in with the then Secretary General of the Western Military Alliance. NATO. I had done my homework, but on the morning of the show, I wasn't happy with how I was describing NATO's relationship with Russia. It wasn't that I didn't understand the issues at all, but I wasn't confident how to describe it with clarity and fluency. In this situation, I never ignore my discomfort. On the contrary, on the contrary, I am looking for it. My inclination to avoid a complexity is a clue that I am not ready to explain it. In this case, I called my then colleagues Jonathan Marcus, who indulged my doing the to and fro. By the end of the call, and with Jonathan advice judging me, I could talk about NATO and Russia with conviction. This time in Athens, my mainstay was This time in Athens, my mainstay was exceptional reporter from BBC Business called Gio Lama. I had asked Joy about one aspect of the story or another, and then, once he had explained it, I had attempted to say it back to him in a simple, short form of words. Often, it wouldn't be right, and Joe wouldn't patently correct me. I had tried again and again, and bit by bit, I had edged towards an explanation of that issue that made sense to me, would make sense when I used it, and was accurate. The lesson I learned as I watched the drama of Greek economy and government of the brink was that you cannot dodge the complexity and hope to explain something well. To explain is to first understand. The reason all this matter is twofold. First and foremost, a complexity badly explained is well complex and inherently hard to understand. That undermines both someone's understanding of what you are trying to convey, but also more broadly undermines their faith in you as a source of useful information. This then not only impact the value someone takes from this part of the explanation, but there may well be a no knock-on impact on your entire efforts. We are all familiar with that moment when someone is explaining something to you and you sense them giving up on trying to make it all comprehensible. The subject is so difficult, this part cannot be simplified further. They appear to have concluded my suspicions suspicion suspicion in these cases is that the person doing the explanation has either come up against a limit on their own knowledge or their own willingness to make the subject accessible. There may be some good reason for that, but in terms of explanation, this is a problem. The second reason why engaging in the complexities matter is that you can you can much better judge what to include, and whatever you choose to include the complexity or not, your confidence is your confidence in your explanation will be greater because you made that decision from a position of strength. Because that is the twist because that is the twist here. Many times I have spent a long while really working to understand something and I end up not using it. It is still worth doing it. It's played its it's played its part either way. It give me confidence in what I do see. This is both relevant to when you are trying to convey complexities that you understand and those that you are having to learn. If you are a teacher, you will already know many techniques to make complex subject accessible to your students. If you are a doctor, you will have ways of conveying complex health condition. My only words of warning to all of us is to constantly check that you are calibrating the explanation to match the level of knowledge of your audience. We can all think of doctors who do this brilliantly and those who leave us lost unless we ask for a more basic explanation. Or think about this from the other side. Say you are having some work done on your horse and you are the go between as different traits people come and go. If you are handling information you don't understand, you risk and not passing it on accurately and Effect- effectively. You might need to get your head into the plumbing or electrical work sufficiently that you can talk to others about it in a credibly and clear way. In other words, the more you concisely engage with complexity, the better you can judge what information to use and how to use it. Understanding leads to more accurate assessment, which leads to better and better explanation. This is why the best explanation always include the complexity. Ask yourself, are three elements in are there elements of this subject I don't understand? A great explanation will include the essential details and essential complexity and do so in the simplest language possible. That simple language will help to meet your next target. This part is really complicated for me. So it's okay. I will read it again just because I'm not getting the point. So let's next start efficiency. The impact that phones have had on our ability to give something our undivided attention remains the focus of both academic research and passionate debate. It is, however, undeniable that we are still willing able to focus for significant periods of time when we want to. Netflix, Amazon, YouTube, the BBC, and other have plenty of evidence that we will listen and watch at length. So too do theaters, cinemas, and podcast producers. There are there are perhaps two in- intertwined considerations here. How well we can give something our full attention and how willing we are to do so. And there is no doubt that the competition for our attention is precious than ever. Technology offers us an ever-present alternative. It is also allow us to shift to something new the moment that we all lose interest. As I have watched the evolution of digital technology and digital consumptions in the last 25 years, one of my responses as a journalist and presenter has been to make sure that if people give me their time, they get a lot in return. This is challenge I have been wrestling with for several years. I created the format of the news program Outside Source in part to take this on. It was designed to have as much information as possible distilled into each minute. The viewer would be given what I call high protein news in exchange for their time, meaning that for every minute of your time that you give me, I will give you as much as usual and useful information in return. Example, during the 2017 UK election campaign, the BBC decided to send me to my home country, Cornwall. Despite being from there, I needed much more than my general knowledge to properly report on the campaign there. And so I was on the lookout for more detail. I, a night for two A night or two before my first broadcast, one of the main UK news bulletins had a report looking at the town of Penzance. Great, I thought. A report not just on the election or even on the southwest of England, but specifically on Cornwall and the election. I watched the report notepad at the ready. I watched the report notepad at the ready. I would it back and watched it a second time. My pad remained empty. I had been shown what the place looked like. I heard the views of a couple of locals, some broad information about the area, but in terms of solid, usable pieces of information, a statistical context analysis. It was it was slim picking. It contained some detail, but very little essential detail. It wasn't a reward for the time I had invested. As a consumer, this was a hugely inefficient way for me to learn about the campaign in Cornwall. It sharpened my thinking about the centrality of efficiency to explanation. Because if you are if you are efficient, you give people more in return for their time, and they likely to be glad of that, as well as giving people more for their minutes. Efficiency provides something else, a space. Let me explain what I mean with a short detour via Florida. In October 2011, I had arrived in Miami from making a documentary in the Caribbean. To avoid giving the wrong impression, this is the one and only time this has happened. I was there to host a series of programs in Fort Myers on Southwest Florida Gulf Coast. So I hired a car and headed out into the night. Interstate 75 is long, straight and flat, and at night there there is nothing to see and no one for company. I switched it, I switched on the local radio news. The death of Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, was the lead of the story. It had been announced a few hours earlier. That night's drab, I heard a raft of tributes and anecdotes about Steve Jobs and one stay with me. The fish tank story. Here it is told by former Apple employee Amit Chaudhary. When engineers working on every when engineers working on the very first iPod completed the prototype, they presented their work to Steve Jobs for his approval. Jobs played with the device, scrutinized it, weighed, weighed it in the in weighed in it in his hands and promptly rejected it. It was too big. The engineers explained that it was simply impossible to make it and seem any smaller. Jobs was quite for a moment. Jobs was quiet for a moment. Finally, he stood, walk over at aquarium and dropped the iPod in the tank. After it touched bottom, bubbles floated on the top. Those are air bubbles, he snapped. That means there are space in there. Make it smaller. You can also find a reference to this story in an article in the Altinic from the day after Steve Jobs died. Dead, 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 dead. The headlines is in praise of bad Steve. I'm not here to assess bad Steve or indeed any of the Steves he may have been, but one phrase lodged me in my mind. There is a space in there. And so it is with explanation. There is almost always a space in there. There is something news reporter learned that hard way. It needs to be shorter. We are told by the editor it can't be. We plead it has to be. They tell us fighting for a space is built into the exercise of being a journalist. The front page only has so much space. The news bulletin is only so long and so on. These constraints are not non-negotiable. non-negotiable. It is the same when you have a fixed duration for a presentation, meeting or appointment. What I am interested in is how we respond to this constraint. The risk is that in our effort to operate within them, we fall into three traps. We rush our delivery, we cram it in too much information, or we jettison valuable information. All these outcomes can harm our explanation. A couple of years ago, the New York Times journalist Jam Bradley tweeted, "The best editors send you back your copy with 1,000 words looked up and you don't even notice them missing." I immediately saved it because Jen is quite right. Fewer words are not a negative and wouldn't automatically reduce the quality of information that you are passing on. Often it's the direct opposite. If I am working on an explanation, I will do multiple swaps of what I am planning to say. Repeat drop into the fish tank if you like. Where can I find the bubbles? Can I find the word or information that are non-essential or that could be replaced with something shorter or simpler? Which sentence is not serving a clear purpose? I call this process tatning. Later, I will show you how I do this. Suffice to see, suffice to see, getting an explanation to a point where it is as efficient as it can be is rarely a single act. It is a series of sweeps. The more we do, the more efficient our explanation becomes. Wow. Sorry, it's too hot. Ah, sorry, guys. Uh, okay. My tongue is gone. There is bubbles. Well, okay, leave it. Like when you drink the hot milk, then you see the one rough surface has rough surface start in your tongue, like that. Similar is again happen with me. It's a bad experience. Bubble, bubble, bubble. Okay. One panel points on this. As I mentioned earlier, efficient explanation isn't the same as a brief explanation. It's about maximizing the time available to you. When we work on our explainer videos, our concern is that the explanation is efficient rather than it being a fixed length. If you can be efficient in your explanation, you can both improve the clarity with which you explain yourself and ensure you have as much space as possible to do this. Ask yourself, is this the most sufficient way I can say this? We have looked at why we need to keep our explanation efficient. Our next attribute is relatable. Related. It's about how we avoid confusion and ambiguity. Next is precision. My tongue is burning. Okay. Sorry, next day I will try cover two chapter or three topics. And from today on, I apply promise too much things, so I'm not going to promise for anything. Uh, okay. What I can do, I'm going to sleep in the early morning. I will wake up at 5:30 a.m. surely. Then I will. I can go for run. I will try. Not I will try. I will go. I will go and can I can. Sorry, I will cover one chapter because I want to finish irrigation subject before 10 before 15 September November. That's why. Okay, guys, it's a bad experience for my tongue. Okay, guys, thank you to be here, and hopefully you will like it and you will follow same uh, way to improve your communication skill, or you can make a habit. This is such a good habit to read any books. It's make you relax, and you will gain some knowledge, so you can also start. Thank you to be here.